Hi and welcome to my Orthodox Talks channel. My name is Very Reverend Ivan Shandra, and I'd like to talk to you today about this week. This week, as we know, is a week of the Publican and the Pharisee, or the Pharisee and the tax collector. It is known with two different names. But what is very special about this week, that there is no fast during this week. Usually we, the Orthodox, fast on Wednesdays and Fridays almost every week of the year, but this week is somewhat special, and because it is special, and there is some interesting explanation as of why this week is so special, I wanted to have a live stream on it to make it more to make it possible for you to maybe use the chat window and send some your suggestions or comments. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So, but the main theme today is the reason why we do not fast during the week of the Publican and the Pharisee. Wednesdays and Fridays of this week, or I should say Wednesday and Friday of the week, is fast free. So let's get started. Actually, the true reason for this is for this not fasting for these not fasting days lies outside of the parable of the publican and Pharisee. Of course, there are some explanations, and some might have heard that we are not fasting because we don't want to be like the Pharisee who fasted twice a week, and he bragged about it. He was he thought of himself very high because he was fasting, and he was telling this to God in his prayer. But I have to tell you that it has nothing to do with the parable itself. So the story is rather interesting, for the lack of a better word, because actually what happened in those days, basically in the Middle Ages, 11th, 12th century, it wasn't very nice that we looked at some heretics of the time, the Armenian Apostolic Church, and the Orthodox started to change their views on some subjects of their faith, and just to make sure that they do not follow the same pattern as the heretics did, they changed the fasting period and the fasting days for this specific week. And the reason why they changed the fasting tradition for this specific week is that in the Armenian Apostolic Church and all non-Chalcedonian churches, this specific week is designated for a strict fast, the whole week. So let's see how it went, how it became to be this fast-free week in our Orthodox Church. So, as I said, there are two explanations for this, and one is a popular one, and it sounds like this: that since the Pharisee from the parable of the Lord says that he fasts twice a week, we don't fast at all during that week. I know many of you probably heard it from your priest even. I know I did when I was young in church, and it looked to me like a very good explanation. We don't want to be the Pharisees, so that's why we don't fast. But later, when I got into seminary and started reading and thinking, especially when you start thinking, well, wait, if we don't want to be like the Pharisee during this week, why are we like the Pharisee during the rest of the year? right? So it doesn't fit. It doesn't come one and one together. Doesn't come here. So after starting some study, I wanted to see the real reason for this non-fasting week, and of course, if we wanted to find something interesting, we have to go now on internet. But in those days, there was no internet. So as soon as I grabbed the book of Typicon, which is the book where all the services are written, how to conduct the services and what are the rules for the fasting and for observing different feasts and things like that. As soon as I started digging, I saw that the chapter 49 of the Typicon, which was and still is dedicated to the Divine Liturgy during the Great Lent and the weeks preceding the Great Lent, it was written there that it is appropriate, I'm quoting now, it is appropriate to know, as in this week, those who are of other wisdom keep fast, called Artsivurin. So they call it this fast, not they, we call it Artsivurin fast. Those people, apparently the Armenians, Armenian Christians, and the Typicon, and you can check it out again, pull out your Typicon and just read chapter 49. We, the monks, now on Wednesdays and Friday, eat cheese and eggs. The laity, on the other hand, eat meat. So, because we don't want to be like those heretics, we stop fasting. So, that was quite an honest explanation. Yeah, it was good enough for me. Until I decided to see what's the Artsivurin feast day. What is not the feast day? What is the Artsivurin fast? Why is it called Artsivurin? I thought it was just some Armenian word for this week, and since we are not observing their fast, well, just wanted to make sure that I understand that word Artsivurin. So when things started change in the life. Here you go. I'm going to bring up the word in Greek, because the Greek word, which was as a transliteration of supposedly Armenian word for this fast, sounded like Artsivurin, and it comes from one supposedly former Armenian Catholicos, or the patriarch, Armenian patriarch, who became Orthodox, and he supposedly wrote some kind of a pamphlet against their own heresy, so to speak, and he calls this fast Artsivurin in his writing. But after digging into some historical explanations and facts, well, it didn't take long to figure out that there is no such word, Artsivurin, in Armenian language. I think there is no such word in Greek either. So it started looking a little bit interesting, when even the book of Typicon points out to Artsivurin fast as the heretics fast, and there is no such word. Some interesting thoughts come up, and the most of the time I was thinking that, well, maybe that's the old language or something like that, but apparently it wasn't. So the thing is that this fast, Artsivurin fast, what was called as Artsivurin fast by the Greeks, and then the Slavs adopted that. word, and that's how it became known in our country, in Russia, in Ukraine, well, I should say in the former Soviet Union countries, or in the Slav countries. Yeah, that's better. And this fast wasn't in place until the 7th century. There was no such thing as Artsevurin fast. But at the same time, around the 7th century, in the Orthodox Church, we started to impose our fast. Yeah, before the Great Lent yet. And we call it now the Cheese Fair Week. We abstain from eating meat and meat products. We eat only cheese, eggs, milk during that week. But this fast, week of fasting, was invented, so to speak, exactly in the 7th century, and became widespread in the East first, and then some non-Chalcedonian churches decided to move from this week, to move their fast from the week exactly before the Great Lent begins, to move it 2 weeks earlier. And they had a reason for it. Well, at least there is an explanation for it. But apparently the Orthodox Church didn't like that, and there were some people who wrote some articles about this, how it wasn't nice, it wasn't good to move the fast, and well, you decide yourself. But before I start reading the funny explanation why, how the Orthodox explain this Artsevurin fast, I'd like to bring up for you that, just for a comparison reason, that for the Armenian Church, Armenians, they don't use Artsevurin word. As I said, there is no such word as Artsevurin in Armenian language. Or maybe there is, so if somebody knows Armenian language, you can shout out in the comments here, or say a few words about it if I'm mistaken. But as far as I know, there is no such word. So the Armenian Church used the word, which is now on your screen, arachavork. Arachavork, I don't know where the emphasis should be put, but that's how it is written. So arachavork and Artsevurin, that's completely different pronunciation and sounds different, right? But this is very legal word for their fasting week, 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the Great Lent begins. So they use arachavork fast, and we call that same fast Artsevurin fast. So, but how it came to be Artsevurin, here is the funny explanation. Okay. And before the explanation starts, I'd like to to say a few words only about the thing that if you're not subscribed yet to my Orthodox Talks channel, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel. It helps me to see that people are interested in the topics that we are talking about on in our channel. So if you would like to support the channel, do it by subscribing. Thank you. So here is the funny explanation. The explanation goes like this, and this is the Greek explanation. A certain Sergius, named Sergius, a teacher of the Armenian heresy, I'm underlining this is the official explanation why we do not follow the Armenian fast during this week, but instead we do not fast at all. A certain Sergius, a teacher of the Armenian heresy, had a dog called Artsevur, or Artsevurin. And this word means the one that goes ahead, the messenger. Sergius often used this messenger when he intended to go to some town, and supposedly that messenger, that dog, was demon possessed. So before going into any town to preach the gospel, this Sergius usually would send his dog ahead. The dog would come, everybody would know that Sergius is coming, and they get together and they talk, and he talks, he preaches, and everybody's happy. So as soon as the dog, as soon as he released the dog, he just followed slowly followed his path to that town. But at one time, when he came to one of the towns, he did not find anybody. Nobody was waiting for him there. So seeing that no one met him, he got very upset, of course. He came to preach the gospel of the truth. His dog went ahead of him, and nobody came out. So how come? So that Sergius got very upset. Upon coming to them, he found out that his demon-possessed dog never came to that town. And they found out later on that there was a wolf, or maybe two of them or three of them, who killed that poor dog. So because Sergius' dog died during that week, Armenians supposedly invented this fast to feel sorry together with the Sergius, right? It's funny, yeah, of course. But how funny is it that this story was taken as a true story and used basically in our typicon, in the book where we learn how to serve God. So it is very interesting how it came to go into our books. And here is something interesting that we have to take into account. That person who wrote this story, as I said, he was supposedly the former Armenian Patriarch or Catholicos, never existed. At least the Russian scholars in the late 19th, early 20th century, they tried to figure out who is that pseudo Isaac or Shaak or Saak, different names, different pronunciation because of the differences in languages. Who is that person? But they never came across any Armenian patriarch in that particular time frame when this story appeared, who would be named as a Saak, Shaak, Saak, Isaac, Isaac, and they started to go through the through the entire story that was written about this dog and Sergius, right? And they came across a very interesting point, that how come the former Armenian Patriarch or Catholicos uses such a strange word that never existed in the Armenian language, and yet he was Armenian Patriarch. He uses that strange word to Artsivurin, to explain about this strange fast, and yet he calls by this name a dog of one of the allegedly servants of his, well, I guess the preacher Sergius, right? So Armenian Patriarch does not know Armenian language, and he doesn't know how to explain why didn't he use Arachavork, something that was understood by other people. So this fact raised the eyebrows of the scholars, and they exactly saw that there could be something, well, not really nice going on. Besides that, it was interesting that the patriarch couldn't know the Armenian word for that fast, they came up, the scholars, the scholars came up with the idea to check the whole list of the former Armenian patriarchs or Armenian Catholicos, and they checked it for that time frame, and there was no such person as Saak or Isaac. There was Saak, right? There was Saak the first, Saak the second. What here is the Saak in the at the end of the 6th century, but we have to look for somebody who was closer to the time when this story was written, and that time was 11th, 12th century. So here I brought up the list of Catholicos of Armenia, starting from the early 11th century and going down to probably up to our age, up to our year, up to the current patriarch of Armenian Apostolic Church. So you can check this list on Wikipedia and you'll see that that's true. So there was no such person as Saak, Isaac, or Shak, different names, different pronunciations. There was no such person at that time when this pamphlet was written. So for me, as a reader, as a member of the Orthodox Church, it was very interesting to how to put these things together. It looked very, very not nice, right? That somebody from the Orthodox Church made up this story just to put down somebody else. And it became known, even not became known, but it made their way into the Typicon yet. So if you want to check it out, check chapter 49 of the Typicon, and you will see that that Typicon uses that word for not the Aracha work. He uses not the Aracha work, but he uses the work of Artsiburin. Different, strange word. Nevertheless, so that's enough with translations, I guess. We have to go further, and I think that we have to see that there was such a person as Sergius, and but he didn't live at the time when all of this started, and that Sergius never had a dog, and that Sergius is considered to be a saint in the Armenian Orthodox Church, in the Armenian Apostolic Church, I'm sorry. And the Armenian Catholicos, Saint Narcissus, explained the story. So we heard the Orthodox story about Sergius and his dog, who apparently was demon possessed, and he could go and gather people for the preacher Sergius coming and telling people all about Jesus Christ. But here is the story, an explanation from the Catholicos of Armenians, saying why they celebrate this week as a fasting week, not like us. Yeah. So here are the quotes. And this story was written in the year 1146 AD. So he says, let's say here about the fast known to us under the name Aracha work, which you blaspheme out of ignorance. So you don't know what you're talking about. He's saying to us, to the Orthodox. You attribute it to the memory of a certain Sergius, a member of a Magi, who had a donkey and a dog with him, and you heard from the apostates of our faith, who told you famous fables full of lies about him. The memory of such a Sergius does not exist among us at all, much less than a creature called, well, that dog that was called in a strange way. For this at least has no existence, for it bears at least one name, and this Sergius among our people has neither existence nor naming at all. He meant that Sergius particular, who had a dog, right? And he goes on explaining, and the real reason for the establishment of the fast is stated. It is said that the fast is called Aracha work, which is translated as the previous one, or the one that goes before the main one. So we are approaching the Great Lent, and this short fasting week in Armenian Church goes 2 or 3 weeks prior to that Great Lent. So this fast is called Aracha work, which means the one that goes before, because it is the first of those established in Armenia. And Saint Gregory the Saint Gregory the Illuminator. And he offers explanation about their Sergius, not the Sergius that the Orthodox came up with. And he tells this story, an interesting story, that their fast, Aracha work fast, is also called the Sergius fast. But let no one be deceived by such a name. For Saint Sergius, whose memory is celebrated at this time, was a noble prince of Cappadocia in the reign of Constantine the Great and his sons. So that's a completely different person. He, having been persecuted when the godless Julian reigned, retired to Persia to the king Sabakuk, and having managed there to convert many of the army to the Christian faith, Saint Sergius and his son received a martyr's crown from the same Persian king. Since now the day of his repose happened on the 30th of the month of January, it is established to celebrate his memory on the Sabbath day after the fast of Aracha work, just like the memory of Saint Theodore the Recruit is celebrated by all the churches at the end of the first week of Lent. So in other words, this Armenian Catholicos explains that what's the difference? You observe your fast, you observe Saint Theodore the Recluse, the Recruit, and we observe our fast, and we have our Saint Sergius, who came and who preached and who suffered for Christ for his preaching. So we are celebrating our Sergius just like you're celebrating, and the whole church is celebrating Saint Theodore. So basically, it was just probably, in my opinion, I am just trying here to think, and why would such a thing happen, that the Orthodox Church brings up a story that was made up by someone, and they take it as a main point in their fight against this heresy. For me, as an Orthodox Christian, it would be good enough to say, we do not fast during this week, the week of the Publican and the Pharisee, because this week happens to be a week of fast for the heretics, and we don't want to be seen a part of that heresy. So just to distinguish the two, that would be good enough for me. And I hope that this Aracha work and some kind of different names that come here they are Artsevurin and Aracha work. These names do not stay long enough in our history. So it would be much better for us to understand that the fasting during this week is stopped or was omitted fully just for the reason that nobody confused the Orthodox with the Armenians, with the Armenian Church. It is strange that we in our churches hear that we do not fast in this week, during this week, because we don't want to be like the Pharisee who fasted twice a week, and he bragged about it. It is strange as well, because it is not the main case, the main point of our fast-free week, right? The main point of our fast-free week is all about being humble, learning about things that are appropriate, that are needed for us to go through the entire time of the Great Lent. Being humble and seeing that it is not food, it is not the food that takes us away or brings us closer to God. That's a very good explanation, I think, for this fast-free week, that during Great Lent, we should put all our attention not into our food, not into gastronomy, but to put our attention only into our heart. Look into our heart. Maybe we have to humble our pride. We have to get away from different things, sins. And I think that's the main message of this week, of the week of the Publican and Pharisee. We could take a lot of things from this week by learning that we should start learning prayer, how to pray properly, how to pray attentively to our Lord, and what to put into our prayer, what words to use for our prayer. As we know, the publican or the tax collector used those very simple words: God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And these words are full of humility. These words break the pride. These words underline that I want God be a part of my life. And I think that's quite an interesting explanation as of why we are not fasting this week. So I hope that this talk that we had today about the differences between the Armenian fast and the Orthodox fast, it'll bring peace into our minds, meaning that we will not go after somebody else just to make our own point. We will try to look into our own hearts instead, try to see our own wrongdoings, try to fix them as soon as we see them, and we will try as much as we can put all our attention unto Jesus Christ, follow him during the entire period of Great Lent, and start to realize that we are members of the great church, of the Orthodox Church, which offers salvation to people through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. So let us all remember that there might be some stories that we are not proud of, that were in the past, and there might be some stories that we would love to change now, but we can't. So one thing that we can do is to look what we can do on our behalf in our time to make sure that those things don't happen again, that we never use somebody else we never turn somebody else down in order to bring ourselves up. That's the story for today, and if you stayed to the end, I'm thankful. If you'd like to support this channel, as I said before, please do subscribe, and you can tell your friends, relatives about this channel. Would be nice if you could share this channel and just give it a thumb up, right? It is interesting when channels like this get a promotion on YouTube and more people start seeing this. So God bless you all. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.